What is going on? Damn, I am loud on my end. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Pick Six channel. And we are live on a Friday night to talk about the Steelers. Why am I hearing myself? Okay. All right. Yeah, so the Steelers, man, they had yet again another 10-7 season, finishing slightly above 500, which is what they're typically known to do. All right. They actually finished 10-7 and got eliminated in the first round the last 3 seasons. So in 2023, 2024, and 2025, they finished the exact same way. All right. So I have a few things written down here. I actually have like a page or so on here. I guess first things first, let's recap the game against the Houston Texans, because that's the first thing, and it's probably going to be the shortest recap. That's why I didn't make a full video on it, because there's not that much to say about this game. So let's talk about the game on Monday night. So the Steelers got blown out 30-6. Okay, they got completely outplayed. I think we've said that before in a playoff game. The Houston offense was actually pretty sloppy in that game. CJ Stroud did not play a very clean game, which is very, very concerning, the fact that they were still able to blow out the Steelers with how bad the Texans offense was that night. So that's even more concern for the Steelers in that game. And offense could not capitalize on the mistakes that were given to them by Houston. So that's really it. they got outplayed, they got dominated. Texas defense played fantastic. Steelers offense, the line couldn't protect the crazy stuff that Houston was throwing at them. And when you have a 40-year-old quarterback who's not as mobile as he once was, yeah, it's not going to end very well for that quarterback. And that's what happened. So that's really it. Joey Porter Jr. actually played a pretty good game. So that's worth noting too. Now, because that's really all there is to say about that game. Okay. Now let's get into some of the good stuff. Okay. Mike Tomlin, I believe it was on Tuesday. So the day after, it was like 12 hours after the game had ended, he stepped down from being the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, it sounds like that's exactly what happened. I know I was over there speculating and stuff, saying that I thought that maybe there was a bit of a mutual agreement. But after watching Art Rooney and what he had to say in his press conference, it sounded like Tomlin was the guy who truly did just step down. And, you know, the reports that have been happening, the stuff that I've been hearing was like the players, man, they were pretty sad and upset that this was happening. And honestly, great the fact that Mike Tomlin was able to have that sort of effect on his players. So that gets you to truly know his leadership and stuff. Hold on, let me get a quick drink of water here. So Mike Tomlin obviously was a great leader. Overall, I thought he was a good head coach. I'm not going to say he was a great head coach, but I think he was a good head coach. He did get a Super Bowl very early in his career. I think it was his second season as head coach that he got his Super Bowl win. Never had a losing season. Yes, I get it. We don't like to bring that up too much in Steeler Nation, but that's also something worth noting. He never had a losing season. Okay. And yes, him being a great leader was also something to take into account. But I think this was the perfect time for a change for both sides. Okay, Mike Tomlin, honestly, he didn't have that same fire. He didn't have that same spark that made him who he was as a coach anymore. And we really started to notice that on this channel, at least really in 2023, sometime in 2023. And, you know, at times he would show some fire, like when they played the Ravens, when they played the Lions, he showed that fire, but that wasn't Mike Tomlin the entire season. Okay. And another reason why there's times I actually have quite a few things on here. So the Steelers have had 7 consecutive losses in the playoffs. Okay, 5 consecutive playoff losses by double digits. Okay, and in all of those losses, they have trailed by at least 3 touchdowns in those games. So they're not even competing. Sure, they're making it into playoffs consistently. Sure, they're getting these 10-7 records, slightly above average records in the regular season. But when it comes to the postseason, they're not even competing in these games. All right. I think the last time they truly competed in a playoff game was against Jacksonville. Was it against Jacksonville? It had to be that time, even though they were down 3 possessions. So the Steelers are notoriously known for starting off very slow in these playoff games. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, they always start off slow in playoff games. They always seem to be just outcoached in those playoff games, and that's what matters. Okay, regular season stuff, that is awesome. That is cool to talk about. But when you're not getting it done in the postseason, that's what really the legacy comes in. Okay, you're not really noticed by what you do in the regular season. You're really noticed by what you do in the postseason. And I've seen people compare Mike Tomlin to Doc Rivers. So I mean, I'm not going to go out and say that that's not wrong. A lot of people are saying that he was even the modern day Marvin Lewis, and that's pretty true. He even tied the record of the most consecutive losses for a head coach in 7. So, yeah, and another thing, his schemes. This is, I think, my last thing. His schemes, they were outdated. The NFL has really changed in the past 19 years since he really started as the head coach. And yes, when he started as a head coach, he was pretty effective. His schemes were pretty effective. Defenses, they were pretty good under Mike Tomlin when he first started. Then, it just really started to get stale, and they weren't adapting. That's really what it was. His schemes were outdated, and they weren't adapting. And he even admitted that at some point during the season. I think it was after the loss against Cincinnati. One of those losses, I honestly, I kind of stopped watching Mike Tomlin press conferences this year because you would get like some crazy sayings. I know he said something after week 18, like, what the heck did he say? Something about if my aunt had male parts, she would be my uncle. Something's like weird stuff to answer the questions from reporters. So I honestly stopped watching it because I'm like, damn, we're just hearing the same stuff kind of over and over again, like the lack of execution, stuff like that. It's like the same stuff. So why am I going to continue to watch the same stuff, even though I continue to watch Steeler games the past 3 seasons? Yeah. Doc Rivers is crazy. Hey, I've seen it. Offensive coordinator got blamed for a lot of those losses. Yeah, and that's something that we continue to do. And the one thing's been consistent, and that's Mike Tomlin as the head coach. So, yeah, man, I appreciate Mike Tomlin and what he did as being part of the Steelers team. Again, 9 years, that's a long time. I mean, he was the Steelers head coach for pretty much my entire childhood and going into my adulthood from when I was 6 years old to when I was 21 years old. That's a long time. And even before that, but really that's when I started watching the sport. Didn't want to answer any questions, so he was saying some. Yeah, I think so. It was weird saying the Tomlinisms, and will I miss that? Sure, okay, because some of them were a little bit funny. I can't even think of them. There were some pretty crazy sayings out there. So yeah, they weren't going anywhere either, and that's another thing to point out because sure they won a division this year, which the AFC North was probably the worst that it's ever been in years, really since Burrow and Jackson have been a part of the division. That's the worst that it's been. Okay. And the Steelers were able to capitalize off that. And some would even say that was a lucky win in week 18. And I kind of would agree with you with Tyler Luke missing that field goal. So maybe it was just a fluke that the Steelers even made the playoffs this season. But they weren't going anywhere. They were never legit contenders the past, they haven't been legit contenders since 2017. That's a long time. Sure, they've never really gone down. They've never finished below 500, but they weren't going up either. And that's a problem too. Because sure, you could be in the middle of the pack, but you never want to stay there as an organization. And that's just what they were doing. So when you're in that situation, it's like there's not really room to go up, and there's room to go down, but if you're trying to get better, it's going to be tough because you're not going to get those crazy draft picks. You're not going to get good draft capital out of that. To get those elite players out of college, that's just not going to happen. So that's another reason why I thought it was time. Honestly, guys, I thought the Steelers should have moved on from Tomlin after the 2024 season. I thought that was just a terrible way to end that season. They were 10-3. Sure, the schedule down that stretch was tough, right? But they couldn't win one of those games. Like, they were so close to closing out that division, man. And that wasn't the only collapse under Mike Tomlin. There was quite a few. 2020 was probably the worst. Obviously, 2024. 2018, they were the first seed, I believe, after 11, 12 weeks, and then they just dropped down, and they wound up missing the playoffs that season, which that was one of the worst seasons under Mike Tomlin, I'd say, because the expectations were higher. I don't think the expectations were Super Bowl or bust that season. It was that was the expectation for the 2017 season, but that wasn't the expectation for the 2018 season, especially after they lost Le'Veon Bell. He sat out, stuff like that. But there was still expectation to at least make the playoffs and compete in the playoffs. They didn't even make it. So just stuff like that, man. There was definitely consistencies under Mike Tomlin that weren't good. Constantly losing to teams under 500, constantly playing down the competition. And that was on display even this year. They lost to the Cleveland Browns. Sure, they didn't have DK Metcalf, and they had a really good defense, but it seemed like in that game, they were just more focused on Myles Garrett than actually winning the football game. You know what I mean? Let's take another swig. I really tried to get a gallon in a day. But yeah, playing down the competition was just a tradition under Mike Tomlin. And it was even to the point where as a Steeler fan, I'm like, damn, I'm a little nervous to play this 2-10 team. I'm a little nervous to play this 0-10 team, a team that hasn't won yet, because it's just what they did. You know what I mean? So I want to show my respects to Tomlin, because clearly players wanted him to stay. And apparently there was even Rodgers was pretty emotional. TJ Watt was a little emotional. So we'll see where players go. And that's something else that I'll get into. And let's just talk about what's next, man. Coaching staff. There needs to be a coaching staff clean out. Okay? Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, except for special teams. Okay, I want Danny Smith to stay. I know he had an interview, I think, with the Commanders. Hopefully, the next head coach brings him back, because it seems like the Steelers organization is going to put a lot into the next head coach and give that coach the flexibility to pick out his own offensive coordinator, pick out his own defensive coordinator. And I think that's great. Obviously it depends on who the coach is and the tree that they possibly can bring, but I like that they're doing that for the next head coach. And I also think that there's a lot of people out there that want to be the next head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, I think there's a bit of attraction there to be the next head coach for the Steelers. And let's just hope so, man, because there's a lot of openings for coaches this year. So I think they should have a coaching staff clean out. Again, the defensive schemes weren't good this year. They had the highest paid defense in the league, and they were one of the worst defenses. Just completely underperforming this year. And that just can't happen, especially when you're putting so much, when you're investing so much in that defense. Being bottom 10, that's just not going to cut it. And offensive coordinators, man, the offensive play calling. Now, I was a little bit light last year. I even said when I made this exact video last year that I wouldn't mind seeing Arthur Smith back as the Steelers OC. I'm going to say it now. I don't want to see him as the OC next year. The play calling was just bad this year. I think it got worse this year than what it was last season. They have a guy, Pat Freiermuth, tight end, could be a top 10 tight end in the league. They don't use him. They don't utilize him at all. The last time they truly utilized him, honestly, was, yes, against the Bengals, and his rookie season when Big Ben was still the quarterback. That's really the only two times that we've seen Pat Freiermuth truly utilized in the passing game. And the schemes on the offensive side, there was a lot of run plays, a lot of screen passes, and a lot of just dunk offs. They didn't necessarily take too many shots downfield. I know they did a lot more this season than they did last year, but still, I mean, the play calling, especially, I could think of a lot. The one against the Bears in the 2-minute drill, I believe it was 3rd and 9. They went like some little 2-yard pass, and I don't think they had any timeouts or stuff like that. And then decided to throw a 2-yard pass. I think they needed a field goal touchdown. I honestly forgot. But it was a terrible play call, and that led them to have to do a 4th and long. You know what I mean? So the situational play calling was bad all year. So let's hope that the next head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers can bring out a good offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, because honestly, I'm a little bit more concerned about that. I think they could bring in a good head coach, and I like where they're looking. And let's go over the potential coaches for the Steelers in 2026. Number 1 on my list, Matt Canada. Number 2, Todd Haley. Number 3, Arthur Smith. Now, of course, that's if I want them to go 0-16. But on the real, there's Brian Flores, there's Kubiak, the 49ers offensive coordinator, Chris Shula, and there's plenty more, man. Honestly, I see a lot of people saying that they want offensive-minded head coach for the next head coach. I don't really mind if it's an offensive mind or defensive mind. Again, I think it's the coordinating that makes the difference here, truly. Because, yeah, we could get an offensive-minded coach, but what if the defensive coordinator isn't too great? You know, and then we could get a good defensive-minded coach, but what if the offensive coordinator isn't too great? So I think it relies a lot on what the next head coach could bring, who he brings in with him. So I think they'll lean a little bit more towards a defensive coach, which, again, that's part of the Steelers' identity. And I know that has kind of left behind. The NFL kind of left that identity behind. They're very much an offensive league now. And that's probably going to stay that way for a long time, because especially with how favorable offensive penalties are, it's probably going to stay that way. But I wouldn't mind Kubiak, man. He's that one play call that he had against the Eagles, where he had Jennings throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey. That was one hell of a play call, man. So I'm not sure if he's had any head coaching experience. This is all kind of new to me. I know Brian Flores has had head coaching experience and even experience with the Steelers organization. I think he was a linebacking coach when he was with the Steelers in 2022. I know he was head coach for, was it the Dolphins a few years ago too? That didn't work out too well, but I think he was with the Steelers after that. But I don't think he's a bad head coach, man. Honestly, it just, again, this whole situation is going to prove whether it was a Mike Tomlin issue or if it was the organization issue. What this offseason is going to do for the Steelers is going to have to prove that Art Rooney knows what he's doing, and is going to have to prove that whether or not Omar Khan knows what he's doing as the GM. That's what this offseason is going to prove. Now, Art Rooney did say that he doesn't necessarily want the Steelers to tank, and I'm for that. I am. But that means you're going to put a lot on your next coaching staff you're going to have a lot of expectations for your next coaching staff. okay, to try to go out and win a Super Bowl. Not to say that it's impossible with the current roster that they have. I don't think the roster is that bad. I think, sure, they're a little bit off compared to the elites in the NFL right now, but I genuinely think that they have a shot with the right coaching staff. But again, are some of these players going to leave? Is Cam Hayward going to want to stay with the Steelers without Tomlin there? Jalen Ramsey wanted to get traded to the Steelers because of Mike Tomlin. Patrick Queen came to the Steelers because of Mike Tomlin. Okay, a good portion of these players came because of Coach Tomlin. So, are we going to see a lot of trades in this offseason? I'm sure DK Metcalf, that's probably the reason why he came to Pittsburgh as well. So, there is a lot that may happen this offseason. And I'm not sure which direction they're going to go to. It all depends on where the players want to go to, if they want to stay. That's really what it comes down to, guys. I honestly, at this point, I don't want them to tank. You know, you never want your team to suck for a season or 2 or 3, however long it takes to tank. But at this point, it might be better for the Steelers to have a down year and not be very good. Again, I don't want them to not be very good. But if they want to get back to where they want to get to, which is inevitably a Super Bowl, they're probably going to have to tank. In this current day in the NFL, that's probably the best move. The best move probably is to trade your top players. The best move is to probably trade away the players who have big contracts at this point to get that draft capital. And I know they have some draft capital this upcoming draft, but it's not like the premium draft picks or anything like that. So, yeah, that's really all there is, man. That's really all I had for that. I kind of got over that pretty quick. Do you think Rooney is way outdated? That's something we're going to have to find out. Honestly, like this offseason is the Steelers front office is time to prove themselves because they had that stability with Tomlin. They had that comfort with Mike Tomlin because, again, they didn't suck under Mike Tomlin. So I'm not going to go out and say that Mike Tomlin wasn't a good head coach. Clearly, there was some skill in what Mike Tomlin was doing, right? Because they were going 0-16 and stuff like that. So clearly you had something to fall back on. They don't have that comfortability this offseason because they're in that search. And I believe this is the first time that this front office is going to be in that search for a head coach. So it's time for them to prove themselves. And if they can't, then it is a front office issue. That's just something we're going to have to find out. That's why I wanted the Steelers to move on from Tomlin. Because, yeah, they were in their comfort zone. But they also weren't going anywhere. You have to kind of get out of that comfort zone. You have to get out of that situation in order to realize whether or not you could go anywhere. That's what I got. Because I want to see, of course I want to see this team win a Super Bowl, man. I'm not sure how close they are right now with the roster that they have. Maybe they can. Again, maybe they can under the right coach staff. Maybe they can. That's just something that we're going to have to figure out this season and this offseason. So I'm excited for it, man. There's a lot to cover this offseason. There's a lot of things to look forward to this offseason for the Steelers. And we'll definitely be covering all that throughout the entire offseason. Are players going to stay? Are players going to leave? Who's going to be the next head coach for the Steelers? Are the Steelers going to completely clean out their coaching staff? Because they're open to it. Like I said, they are leaving it up to the next head coach on whether or not they want to bring back those coordinators, which I don't think they will. Let's just hope they bring back Danny Smith because that's the one coach that I hope they keep. But that's really all I got for now, man. I don't want to be too repetitive on here. I know it was kind of a short live. I got to do that stuff pretty quick. So, where do I see the Steelers now? Honestly, it's a wild card. It's a complete wild card because we don't know what they're going to look like next year. And it's exciting. And it's something that I'm looking forward to. And maybe it doesn't end well. Maybe this season is going to be bad for the Steelers. This upcoming season is going to be bad for the Steelers. But man, this is the most excited that I've been for an off season and for a Steelers season that I've been in a long time. So I'll leave it at that. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see for the Steelers. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go live for a game this week. Maybe I'll go live for a game next week for championship weekend. That's gonna do it for this live. I will catch you guys next week on Pick 6, and hope you guys have a good rest of your evening and have a good weekend. See you guys later, man.